You might think the UK is just like America, but with better actors and funny accents. You are absolutely wrong. Visiting that foggy island means accepting customs that baffle anyone from the outside world. From scorching our hands at bathroom sinks to watching grown adults chase cheese down perilous cliffs, we have found 49 quintessentially British quirks that define their national insanity. You might think you know British culture, but wait until you discover why they pay a government tax just to own a television. These traditions might seem normal to them, but to us Americans, they leave us scratching our heads and questioning their sanity. If you are ready to see the dumbest, weirdest, and most ridiculous habits that prove Britain is basically a different planet, hit that subscribe button right now. Let's dive in. 1. The British bathroom experience begins with a plumbing disaster that has baffled American visitors for generations, known as separate hot and cold taps. Instead of a single mixer faucet providing warm water, you are forced to use two distinct spouts that offer only boiling lava or Arctic ice with no middle ground. This design flaw originated in the 19th century when hot water was considered undrinkable, so they kept it separate to prevent contamination of the cold supply. While the rest of the world updated their pipes decades ago, the British stubbornly refused to modernize their sinks. It forces you to perform a frantic hand dance between the streams to avoid suffering from third-degree burns. 2. Beans on toast is a national dish that looks like something a college student would eat during a desperate, frantic finals week. While Americans view baked beans as a barbecue side dish, the British voluntarily pour an entire can of tomato sauce sludge over soggy bread and call it dinner. This culinary choice became popular during World War II when food rationing forced people to eat whatever was available in a tin, but they inexplicably kept eating it after the war ended. It is bizarre to watch a grown man in a suit sit down at a restaurant and order a meal that costs 50 cents to make and requires absolutely no chewing. 3. The British government forces every household to pay an annual tax just for the privilege of owning a television set. In America, we only pay for cable or streaming services, but in the UK you are legally required to fund the BBC even if you never watch it. They actually employ enforcement officers who supposedly drive around in detector vans to track down anyone watching the news without a license, like some kind of dystopian sci-fi movie. If you get caught watching live broadcasts without paying your fee, you can face a massive fine or even go to court, which sounds like an insane violation of freedom to any American. 4. If you violently slammed into a British person on a crowded sidewalk, they would immediately apologize to you for being in your way. This pathological need to say sorry for everything is a social reflex that completely confuses Americans who are used to confrontation or at least silence. It stems from a deep cultural awkwardness and a desire to avoid making a scene at all costs, even when they are the victim of the collision. You could literally step on their foot and spill their coffee, and they would still ask for your forgiveness, because being polite is more important to them than justice or their own physical pain. 5. Village cricket is a bewildering sport where grown men stand in a field for days doing absolutely nothing while wearing white sweaters. Unlike baseball, which finishes in a few hours, a cricket match can last for 5 entire days and frequently ends in a draw, which feels pointless. The most important part of the game is not the score, but the mandatory tea break, where everyone stops playing to eat cucumber sandwiches and drink hot tea. It is less of a competitive sport and more of a socially acceptable excuse for men to avoid their families and stand on a nice lawn for an entire weekend. 6. Driving in the UK is a terrifying experience for Americans because the entire country stubbornly refuses to drive on the right side. While almost every other nation agreed to standardize traffic laws, the British decided to keep driving on the left just to be different from France and America. History suggests this dates back to medieval knights needing their sword hand-free, but today it just means tourists constantly look the wrong way and almost die. It feels completely unnatural to sit in the passenger seat to steer the car and navigate roundabouts clockwise while every instinct in your brain screams that you are crashing. 7. Walking into a British bathroom and feeling a damp, shaggy rug under your feet is a truly horrifying sensory experience for Americans. For some inexplicable reason, builders in the UK decided that putting absorbent carpet next to a toilet and shower was a brilliant interior design choice. It creates a breeding ground for mold and bacteria that essentially traps moisture and smells in the floor forever instead of using easy-to-clean tile. It is statistically the most unhygienic way to decorate a room designed for water and waste. Yet you will still find these moist carpets in thousands of older houses across the country. 8. The Chip Buddy is a sandwich that consists entirely of French fries stuffed between 2 slices of buttered white bread. Americans love carbs, but this British invention takes things to a dangerous level by wrapping starch in even more starch with no protein in sight. It is usually smothered in brown sauce or ketchup and served as a quick lunch that will instantly send you into a food coma. You can actually order this in restaurants and nobody will look at you strangely because eating a potato sandwich is considered a perfectly normal and acceptable way to fuel the human body in Britain. 9. Imagine rushing to a bathroom at a train station with a full bladder only to be stopped by a metal turnstile demanding payment. In the UK, using a public restroom is not a basic human right, but a business transaction that requires you to carry exact change in coins. If you do not have 50 pence in your pocket, you are simply forced to hold it or jump the gate like a criminal while security watches. It is a baffling system to Americans who expect bathrooms to be free and accessible rather than a profit center for the local government transport authorities. 10. British people are so terrified of direct confrontation that they communicate with their neighbors almost exclusively through angry laminated notes. Instead of knocking on your door to ask you to turn down your music, they will tape a sarcastic letter to your windshield or hallway wall. These notes usually start with a polite greeting before unleashing a paragraph of pure rage about your parking skills or your garbage bins. It allows them to vent their anger without ever having to look you in the eye, or have an actual uncomfortable human conversation, which is the ultimate goal of British social interaction. 11. Every year, a group of absolute lunatics gathers at the top of a near vertical cliff in Gloucester to chase a wheel of dairy. Cooper's Hill Cheese Rolling is an event where grown men and women hurl themselves down a steep slope, risking broken necks just to catch an 8-pound circle of double Gloucester cheese. It is technically illegal, and local authorities beg people not to do it, but thousands show up anyway to watch bodies tumble like rag dolls. To an American, this looks less like a sport and more like a mass casualty event, where the prize is something you could buy at the deli for $10. 12. Americans get confused by simple traffic circles, but the British have taken this obsession to a level that defies all logic and reason. They have built something called the Magic Roundabout in Swindon, which is a terrifying concrete nightmare consisting of 5 mini roundabouts arranged in a circle around a 6th central one. You have to navigate against the flow of traffic while other cars come at you from every direction, like a chaotic video game. It is statistically safe, but visually it looks like an architect spilled his coffee on the blueprints and just decided to build a concrete labyrinth to torment learner drivers forever. 13. If you walk into a British kitchen expecting to find just food, you will be shocked to see a washing machine spinning next to the oven. For some bizarre reason, they install their laundry appliances right where they cook dinner, which means your dirty gym socks are being washed inches away from your lasagna. In America, we have separate laundry rooms, or at least a closet, but in the UK, space is so limited they combine the two. It feels incredibly unhygienic to mix the smell of fabric softener with the smell of frying onions while trying to ignore your underwear vibrating the silverware drawer. 14. The British breakfast includes a mysterious black disc that looks like a burnt hockey puck, but is actually something much more disturbing. Black pudding is a sausage made almost entirely from congealed pig blood mixed with oatmeal and fat, which is then fried and served on your plate. While Americans enjoy pancakes or bacon, the British happily eat solidified blood before noon without even blinking an eye or questioning life choices. It tastes as metallic and rich as you would expect, yet it remains a staple of their morning fry-up despite sounding like an ingredient from a witchcraft potion rather than a breakfast food. 15. Walking into a British courtroom feels like stepping onto the set of a low-budget historical drama because the judges are wearing costumes. High court judges and barristers are still required to wear white horsehair wigs and black robes that date back to the 18th century. They look completely ridiculous sitting there in modern times trying to be serious while wearing a dusty rug on their head that costs hundreds of pounds. Americans ditched this fashion statement after the Revolution, but the British cling to it because they believe looking like a colonial ghost somehow adds more authority and dignity to the legal justice system. 16. You cannot have a conversation with a British person for more than 30 seconds without them mentioning the state of the sky. Talking about the weather is a national obsession because it is the only safe topic that avoids any real emotional intimacy or awkwardness. They will discuss the rain with the cashier, the bus driver, and their own mother as if the weather has changed significantly since yesterday. To an American, it seems incredibly boring to constantly analyze cloud patterns, but for them, it is a crucial social lubricant that prevents them from having to talk about their actual feelings or opinions. 17. Christmas in Britain involves a terrifying theatrical tradition called pantomime, where fairy tales are destroyed by men dressed as women screaming at children. Families flock to theaters to watch Z-list celebrities perform chaotic versions of Cinderella, where the main jokes involve sexual innuendo and throwing candy at the audience. The crowd is encouraged to scream "He is behind you" at the actors, while a man in a dress creates havoc on stage. It is a fever dream of noise and confusion that leaves American tourists wondering if the entire country has lost its mind or if the water has been spiked with hallucinogens. 18. Language barriers can lead to extreme embarrassment if you try to compliment a British person on their nice pants. In the UK, the word pants refers exclusively to underwear, so if you tell a coworker you like their pants, you are technically commenting on their boxers or briefs. You must use the word trousers if you want to talk about their jeans or slacks without sounding like a creeping pervert. It is a linguistic trap that catches thousands of American tourists every year who think they are being polite, but are actually making everyone in the room incredibly uncomfortable with their accidental underwear talk. 19. For reasons that defy science, the British do not wash their dishes directly in the sink, but instead place a plastic tub inside the sink. They fill this plastic bowl with soapy water to wash their plates, even though the sink itself is literally designed to hold water. It adds an extra layer of plastic that gets slimy and gross while reducing the actual space available for washing dirty dishes. They claim it protects the porcelain or saves water. But to an American, it looks like they are trying to wash their dishes in a bucket because they do not trust their own plumbing. 20. If you visit London, you might encounter a traditional dish that looks like something you would find in a biology lab specimen jar. Jellied eels are chopped up river eels, boiled in stock, which cools down to form a gelatinous clear slime around the gray meat. Cockney locals have eaten this since the 18th century and claim it is delicious, but the texture is essentially cold, fishy jello. It is the kind of food that makes you question how a civilization that conquered the world could have such a terrible palate. Most Americans would rather starve than let a cold, slimy eel slide down their throat. 21. The House of Commons looks less like a serious government meeting and more like a chaotic zoo full of angry middle-aged men. Instead of debating laws politely, politicians scream and jeer at each other while waving papers in the air like unruly school children. The Prime Minister has to stand there and get roasted by the opposition, while hundreds of people shout unintelligible noises from the green benches. To an American watching this on television, it seems impossible that any actual legislation gets passed amidst all the theatrical shouting and insults. It is Democracy performed as a wrestling match where the person who yells the loudest apparently wins the argument. 22. There is a restaurant chain in the UK that serves chicken, but for some reason it has achieved a cult status that baffles outsiders. It is called Nando's, and British people act like going there is a spiritual pilgrimage rather than just eating spicy poultry. They use the phrase cheeky Nando's to describe the experience, which is a slang term that no American can successfully define or explain. It is just grilled chicken with peri-peri sauce, but the youth culture treats it like a Michelin star dining experience. If you ask a Brit why it is so special, they will just stare at you and say, "You just have to go there, mate." 23. Christmas dinner in Britain is not complete until you have pulled a cardboard tube that violently explodes in your face. Christmas crackers are placed on every plate and contain a small strip of gunpowder that makes a loud bang when you snap them open with the person next to you. Inside, you find a terrible paper crown that you are forced to wear, a plastic toy that breaks instantly, and a joke that is not funny. It is a mandatory ritual of mild explosives and forced fun that turns a nice family meal into a chaotic scene of paper waste and disappointment. 24. There is a specific word for a waste bag that you can say freely in America, but you must never ever say in Britain. If you tell a British person you are wearing a fanny pack, they will likely gasp in horror or burst out laughing because over there the word fanny refers to female genitals. You have to call it a bum bag or simply a waste bag to avoid sounding incredibly vulgar in public. It is the quickest way for an American tourist to accidentally ruin a conversation and create an awkward silence that lasts for an eternity. 25. Rouse. British bathrooms often lack standard light switches on the wall because of strict safety regulations about electricity near water. Instead, you have to fumble around in the dark to find a dirty string hanging from the ceiling and pull it like you are starting a lawnmower. It makes a loud clunking noise that wakes up the entire house in the middle of the night just so you can use the toilet. Americans are used to normal switches and find this pull cord system to be both primitive and incredibly annoying. It feels less like turning on a light and more like signaling for help in a hospital. 26. There is a sticky, dark brown paste in Britain that divides the nation and terrifies the taste buds of everyone else. Marmite is a yeast extract spread that looks like industrial grease and tastes like licking a salty car tire that has been dipped in soy sauce. The marketing slogan is literally, "You either love it or hate it," because they know it is objectively repulsive to half the human population. British people spread this thick sludge on toast for breakfast, while Americans gag at the smell alone. It is proof that you can convince a population to eat anything if you feed it to them from childhood. 27. If you ask a British person how much they weigh, they will give you a number in stones, which is a unit of measurement that makes 0 sense. 1 stone equals 14 pounds, which is a bizarre number that is impossible to calculate mentally without a calculator. Instead of saying they weigh 150 pounds, they will say they are 10 stone and 10 pounds, leaving Americans completely confused. It is a medieval system that has no place in the modern world, yet they cling to it stubbornly while mocking Americans for not using the metric system. 28. Texting a British person is a minefield because they have a habit of putting a small letter X at the end of every single message. This represents a kiss, and they send it to friends, family, and sometimes even their boss or plumber, which feels incredibly intimate and weird. If you are an American receiving a text from a British coworker ending with a kiss, you might think they are flirting with you, but they are just being polite. If you do not send one back, they might think you are angry with them, which creates a stressful cycle of mandatory digital affection. 29. The British have a strange affection for tacky ceramic statues of dwarfs that they voluntarily place in their front yards for everyone to see. Garden gnomes are everywhere in the suburbs, often fishing or smoking pipes or mooning passers-by with a cheeky grin. To an American eye, they look incredibly kitschy and cheap, but in the UK, They are a beloved part of gardening culture. People even get competitive about their gnome displays, creating little villages of frozen ceramic people. It is a bizarre attempt to add whimsy to a garden that usually results in looking like a scene from a twisted fairy tale. 30. School supplies can get you into serious trouble if you do not know the local slang in a British classroom. If an American student asks a British teacher for a rubber, they will be met with shocked silence or hysterical laughter from the class. In the UK, a rubber is an eraser, but in America it is a slang term for a condom. This linguistic mix-up has caused decades of embarrassment for exchange students who just wanted to fix a mistake on their math test. It is a harsh lesson in cultural differences that you usually only make once before never using that word again. 31. If you open a window in America, you expect a screen to protect you, but in Britain, they invite the entire insect kingdom inside. For some insane reason, British houses almost never have bug screens because they think the mesh ruins the view of their gray skies. This means that every summer, their homes become a free Airbnb for wasps, flies, and massive spiders that crawl across their pillows while they sleep. They would rather spend hours chasing a blue bottle fly around the kitchen with a rolled-up newspaper than simply install a piece of mesh. It is a stubborn aesthetic choice that results in pure chaos. 32. You literally cannot say the name of this traditional dessert in an American school without getting sent to the principal's office immediately. Spotted Dick is a dense sponge pudding made with dried fruit and suet that has the most unfortunate name in culinary history, while British people order it in restaurants with a straight face. American tourists usually dissolve into immature giggles when they see it on a menu. It is served hot with custard and tastes perfectly fine, but nobody can get past the fact that they are eating something that sounds like a medical condition requiring antibiotics. It proves British people are immune to their own unintentional comedy. 33. The British do not just wait in line, they turn it into a high-stakes psychological drama where the rules are deadly serious. If you accidentally skip a spot in the queue, nobody will yell at you because that would be rude. Instead, you will hear a chorus of aggressive tutting and heavy sighing from the people behind you, which is their way of screaming. The social pressure to maintain a perfect single file line is so intense that they will queue for an empty bus stop alone. To an American accustomed to chaos, it is terrifying to see a nation so obediently organized by invisible social laws. 34. Several times a year, the government mandates a national day off called a bank holiday, which triggers a nationwide migration of lemmings. Since the sun rarely shines, the entire population decides to drive to the exact same beach on the exact same day, regardless of the forecast. This results in massive traffic jams where families sit in their cars for 6 hours just to eat a cold sandwich in the rain. They repeat this cycle of misery every single year, hoping for a different result but always ending up in the same gridlock. It is a collective delusion that a day off means relaxation when it actually means stress. 35. In a world where supermarkets exist, the British still pay a premium to have a man drive a tiny electric truck to their house at dawn. The milkman delivers glass bottles to the doorstep like it is still 1950, which feels incredibly quaint and inefficient to modern Americans. You have to wake up early to bring them inside before the local birds peck through the foil caps to steal the cream. It is a charming but baffling commitment to nostalgia, where they willingly pay double the price for milk just to hear the clink of glass bottles. It is basically a subscription service for pretending the internet does not exist. 36. British front doors have a gaping hole in the middle because they refuse to use exterior mailboxes like normal people. The mail carrier has to physically shove your letters through a spring-loaded flap directly into your hallway, often ripping the paper in the process. If you have a dog, this becomes a daily game of Russian roulette for the mailman's fingers as they push mail into the jaws of a waiting beast. It means your important documents end up scattered on the dirty floor mat for you to step on when you get home. It is a medieval delivery system that somehow survived into the digital age. 37. If you order a beer in a traditional British pub, prepare to be disappointed because it will likely be served lukewarm and flat. While Americans believe beer should be ice cold and carbonated, the British enjoy their cask ales at cellar temperature, which is basically room temperature. It has a texture that feels like drinking day-old tea and lacks the refreshing fizz that we expect from a cold brew. They claim the warmer temperature unlocks the complex flavor profile, but to an outsider, it just tastes like the refrigerator broke. It is the only place on Earth where you have to specifically ask for a cold one. 38. There is an unwritten law in the London Underground that carries the penalty of social execution if you dare to break it. You must stand on the right side of the escalator so that people in a hurry can run up the left side. If you accidentally stand on the left, you will feel the burning hatred of 100 commuters staring at the back of your head. They will not say, "Excuse me," they will just seethe with rage until you move out of the way. It is a ruthless efficiency system that turns a simple ride up some stairs into a high-pressure test of spatial awareness. 39. Every November, the British celebrate a failed domestic terrorism plot from 400 years ago by lighting massive fires across the country. Bonfire Night involves building a giant wooden pyre and burning a stuffed dummy that represents a man named Guy Fawkes who tried to blow up Parliament. It is a bizarre tradition where families gather around to watch a human effigy burn while fireworks explode overhead, which feels incredibly morbid. In America, we celebrate independence. But in Britain, they celebrate the fact that the king did not get blown up in 1605. It is a dark history lesson disguised as a fun family outing. 40. The bright red telephone box is a global icon of British culture that serves absolutely no practical purpose in the modern smartphone era. The government spends a fortune maintaining these cast iron relics just so tourists can take Instagram photos inside them. If you actually open the door of one, you will discover they are usually broken and smell strongly of urine rather than nostalgia. They are essentially expensive public toilets with windows that nobody has used to make a phone call since the 90s. Yet the British refuse to remove them because they are terrified of losing their aesthetic identity to modern glass structures. 41. The British concept of a refrigerator is a tiny appliance that fits under the kitchen counter and barely holds a six-pack of soda. While Americans have massive double-door fridges with ice dispensers, the British family fridge is the size of a hotel minibar. This means you can never buy a gallon of milk because it physically will not fit on the shelf without crushing the eggs. You have to play a game of Tetris every time you come home from the grocery store just to close the door. It forces them to shop every few days because they literally do not have the storage space to feed a family for a week. 42. Americans love potato chips, but we draw the line at seafood flavors, which is where the British completely lose their minds. Prawn cocktail crisps are a beloved snack that taste vaguely like shrimp dipped in ketchup and mayonnaise. The smell alone is enough to clear a room, yet people eat them on trains and buses without a care in the world. It is a flavor combination that should not exist in nature, let alone in a bag of chips. Watching someone lick shrimp dust off their fingers is a cultural experience that most Americans would happily pay to avoid. 43. If you walk past a British school, you will see hundreds of tiny children dressed like they are about to attend a board meeting. 5-year-olds are forced to wear blazers, ties, and stiff trousers as part of a strict mandatory uniform policy. It looks absolutely ridiculous to see a first grader playing tag in a muddy field while wearing a miniature suit and tie. In America, kids wear t-shirts and jeans to be comfortable, but in Britain, they believe dressing like a corporate accountant builds character. It turns the playground into a scene from a very tiny business conference. 44. The moment the temperature hits 80 degrees, the entire United Kingdom descends into chaos. because air conditioning is basically a myth. Unlike America, where every building is climate-controlled, British homes and shops are designed to trap heat, which turns them into ovens in summer. People sleep with wet towels and fans blowing hot air around while complaining that it is too hot to function. They refuse to install AC because the heat wave only lasts 2 weeks a year, so they just choose to suffer instead. It is a stubborn refusal to adapt that leaves the whole country sweating and miserable every July. 45. Pizza is the ultimate finger food, but in Britain, you will often see people eating it with a knife and fork. It is a disturbing sight to watch someone scientifically dissect a slice of Domino's pepperoni as if it were a steak. They carefully cut bite-sized pieces to avoid getting grease on their hands, which defeats the entire purpose of eating pizza. It looks incredibly posh and unnatural, like they are trying to bring table manners to a food that was invented to be messy. Americans watching this feel a deep, primal urge to shout at them to just pick it up. 46. Entering an elevator in the UK is a logic puzzle, because the buttons do not match the floors you expect. They call the entry level the ground floor, which is 0, so the first floor is actually 1 flight up. This means if you are American and want the second floor, you actually need to press the button for the first floor. It is a confusing system that causes tourists to constantly get off on the wrong level and wander around lost. Why they cannot just start counting at 1 like the rest of the world remains a mystery of British engineering. 47. The Sunday roast is a weekly cooking ritual that generates more family stress than planning a wedding. Every Sunday, millions of people attempt to perfectly time the cooking of meat, potatoes, vegetables, and Yorkshire puddings to be ready at the exact same second. If the gravy is lumpy or the potatoes are not crispy enough, it is treated as a personal failure that ruins the entire weekend. It turns a relaxing family meal into a military operation where the cook is on the verge of a nervous breakdown. It is less about enjoying food and more about surviving the pressure of culinary expectations. 48. Dunking a cookie into tea sounds simple, but the British treat it like a high-stakes physics experiment. There is a serious national debate about the structural integrity of different biscuits and exactly how many seconds they can survive in hot liquid. If you hold it for 1 second too long, the soggy bottom breaks off and falls into your tea, which is considered a tragedy. They have dunking techniques and strategies to avoid this disaster, which seems like way too much thinking for a snack. To an American, it is just a cookie, but to a Brit, it is a test of skill. 49. The most violent war in British history is not fought with guns, but with opinions about when to pour milk into a cup of tea. Half the country believes you must put the milk in first to protect the china, while the other half insists it goes in last to judge the color. This debate tears families apart, and people will genuinely judge your character based on your method. It is a trivial detail that has been elevated to a matter of national importance. If you do it the wrong way in front of a British person, they will look at you like you just kicked a puppy. Well, there you have it. Proof that while we might speak the same language, Britain is basically a different planet designed to confuse us. If you made it through this list without boiling your hands or eating blood sausage, you need to subscribe to BrainFumble right now. Smash that like button and ring the bell so you never miss us roasting another country's logic. Now I have to know, which one of these 49 things broke your brain the most? Was it the carpeted bathrooms or the jellied eels? Let me know in the comments below.